Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. What I'm sort of going to take as the major theme for my presentation this afternoon is that industrial companies, manufacturing companies in this era of Industry 4.0 need to become tech companies. And if you don't believe me, then Sam Turner, I think, set the scene a little bit earlier with the references he used. But also you could listen to Ian Robertson from BMW, who at a motoring conference recently said BMW is becoming a tech company. So I want to talk in that context about 4 areas of technology that we have been using in the digital tech industry for some time, and to use that as a theme for what I think will be important for manufacturing industry. So, first a word about TechUK. What are we? We're the industry body for digital tech companies. That's chips to clicks. That's ARM and Intel, it's Facebook and Google. And we have companies in our supply chain, but companies that we supply, our members supply. Add those together, you get a digital industry in the UK that is about 16% of domestic output, 10% of employment, 24% of global exports. And they contribute to the UK economy in terms of innovation, growth, productivity, exports, and entrepreneurship, which is another matter that I know is being discussed at this conference. So, what is the key thing here? Well, the key thing is actually convergence of technologies, but in particular, the role of the Internet of Things, big data analytics, cloud computing, and emerging tech such as machine learning, artificial intelligence, along with automation technologies like robotics. All of those are underpinned by data. However, the existence of data alone won't drive an economic growth or increase productivity. It's the coming together of large data sets enabled by IoT devices and sensors, the power of cloud computing, and cutting-edge data analytics technology which will unlock the value and the power of data. And the full economic and social value of data to the UK comes from data in action. Nowhere is this clearer, as you have heard and will hear at this conference, in the manufacturing and smart factory environment. So, let me talk a little bit about these 4 technologies that I've introduced. Firstly, the Internet of Things. We've known for a long time about the possibilities offered by digitizing the world around us, but that's been constrained by lack of connectivity, by cost, by getting the balance between computing power, security, battery life of these distributed devices right. Today, those pressures are all either eased or being eased. And some UK companies are already leading the way in the adoption of IoT solutions. But we're still in the foothills. Ofcom estimates that there are around 300,000 connections in this area, rising to over 3 million in 2024. I think it'll be many, many more. And just to give you another example from aerospace and from automotive, aerospace, an Airbus 350 generates something around 2.4 terabytes of data. BMW estimate their CAV, their connected autonomous vehicles, will generate 4 billion each vehicle. Do the math on the number of cars versus number of aircraft, and you can see that's going to be a vast amount of data. So you're going to need analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence just to deal with that. They have the potential to become big drivers of change. The potential value of big data, data analytics, to the manufacturing sector alone in the UK is estimated to be worth 45 billion. And looking to the near future, clearly the challenge that AI gives us is that it can be a power for good, driving significant UK productivity, economic growth, personal and societal well-being. And the government has recognised this with a focus, small enough you might think, but at least a deliberate focus of £17 million to ensure that AI gets off to a good start or continues to grow in the UK. However, what needs to underpin that is the 4th technology that you see up here, which is connectivity. across a manufacturer's estate, which now, of course, may cross country boundaries, international, transatlantic boundaries, throughout their supply chain, but also throughout the wider market into the distributors and the customers. And that facilitates not just the adoption of new products, but to move towards the servitization, the more service-centric model that we heard about earlier. And depending on use cases, from telematics of parts to on an assembly line through to 3D, cloud-based modeling that you just heard about, there will be different characteristics and types of connectivity requiring different technologies. But ultimately, we see that all being brought together under the heading of 5G. So, it's the convergence of these four technologies that will really produce the real gains. Call it what you will, we can use smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0, but it will be all of those technologies, blurring and improving the divide between plant operations, supply chain, product design, demand management, creates an environment where all available data from the plant floor and all parts along the supply chain, and I do mean the parts as well as all parts of the supply chain, is captured in real time and all the way to the customer. You've heard Volkswagen talk about becoming a transport company rather than a car manufacturer. And those kind of things are underway. And that insight is where the real value of Industry 4.0 lies, I believe. However, when we look at studies and surveys, one was done recently by EEF, only 11% of UK manufacturers thought that their sector was geared up to take advantage of these new technologies. And the report also raised an interesting point. There is a significant advantage in moving first. First of all, the direct benefits from actionable insights, as well as the indirect benefits, such as the potential to disrupt or displace supply chain competitors, determine the platforms that will succeed. Just as importantly, and an issue I want to address more later on, this is how you get the best skills, first dibs. So, let me talk about challenges. And I will list the 3 charts up here, but let's not forget the connectivity challenge. And I want to just talk about each of these in turn. So, first is this issue of trust. Now, this is where I think manufacturing and the industrial sector can learn from the digital sector. The full opportunities of the Internet of Things, big data analytics and AI technologies will only be possible if your customers and their consumers and stakeholders feel confident to share and exchange data. And there are a lot of challenges and concerns around data. It's evident that companies are now able to access increasingly customized and very personalized versions of data. And that's going to potentially make life very easy. However, it also has the potential to cut across things that people hold dear. And there are many, many negative stories of that around our industry, and I think you should be prepared for those to also apply as you put more and more digitization into the manufacturing and industry sector. These are complex concerns, and they need to be addressed relating to where we get data from. And I think there are a real challenge to do this, because without data, as I've said, there will not be the possibility of realizing Industry 4.0. Starting point is having a workable data protection legal framework. That's very important. And GDPR, which is coming next year, will help with this. It's a good building block. But we also need to do more ourselves as companies and as industries to identify, understand, and address the data trust and security issues. In particular, any company in the new industrial model needs to ask itself a few questions. First of all, what data do I have? What am I collecting? Who am I getting it from? Why do I have it? And very, very importantly, does the fact that I've got it and I'm using it bring benefit to my customers or to my partners? If you can't answer that last one as a yes, then really the other 3 are redundant. The other factor in this, of course, is, okay, you've got my data, because I'm a partner or I'm a supplier or I'm a customer, and I trust you want to do good things with it, but are you keeping it safe? And that is a real challenge as you go into digitizing every part of the economy. And we have been there. The digital industry, the internet industry, the online industry, we've already been there. You've seen headlines over that for a number of years, applying to online retailers, online data, online financial services. Well, it's coming here as well. There was a report out yesterday by PwC and the National Cybersecurity Centre that actually highlighted something called AP10. Anybody heard of AP10? Apparently it's a Chinese-based, or China-based, let me say no more than that. I'm quoting them here, by the way. That has been attacking the supply chain of companies in the digital sector. Remember what I said? Manufacturing is becoming digital. And to quote this report, infiltrating supply chains gives the attackers an easy route into many different targets. So as we move from IT to OT, operational technology, it is very important that we put in place the right cyber security policies, processes and technology. The next issue that I want to raise is skills. That's been a huge challenge for the digital sector for many, many years, partly because the digital sector is growing. It's a world leader in that. In the UK, we're growing 32% faster, creating high-skilled, high-value jobs nearly 3 times faster than the rest of the economy. So in short, it's a success story, but a success story that's running out of skills and always has that challenge. So there is potentially, of course, a new triple hit coming our way. The UK's domestic skills pipeline still isn't strong enough. We're not doing a good enough job in schools, universities, and lifelong learning to meet the demand. But of course, we've just opened up restrictions on both EU and non-EU countries in terms of getting skills. The point about are we producing enough domestic skills is quite illustrated by a story from the US. Siemens opened a factory recently. They had 800 jobs. More than 100,000 people turned up wanting to take those jobs. Only 15% actually passed the writing and maths screening test to let them be evaluated for those. And the CEO of Siemens USA commented, there are no jobs for school leavers on the factory floors anymore. It's true that the terminal is the new toolbox. And so you have the same challenge in manufacturing that we live with in the tech sector. And the UK's skills gap, because of that success that I talked about, is the most pronounced in Europe. About 161,000 unskilled vacancies will be in the digital sector by 2020, which is over 20% of all the unfilled vacancies in Europe. So that's a challenge that we'll have to address together. The other thing is connectivity. Coming back to that EEF report, the survey found that only 35% of manufacturers felt their internet connection is adequate for their expected needs over the next 5 years. Now, just think about how long it takes to put digital infrastructure in place. You're talking about a similar time frame. So if we don't work on that soon, then we are going to clearly have a big problem. So are there solutions to this? Well, clearly, government has a role, and in particular, it has a big role in connectivity and skills, but industry can also do things. And let me start by picking up the trust thing and perhaps putting out an idea. In TechUK, we have actually worked with comms companies and online tech companies to establish a set of trust principles for the Internet of Things world. Because we believe that if we don't do this, then that will inhibit our success and the success of our customers. And those principles cover 3 areas: data transparency and customer empowerment, cybersecurity, and interoperability. Nobody wants to be locked into one particular version of the Internet of Things world. And if you bring those things together, we think that will bring an umbrella for best practice to assemble, be that security or privacy by design, or be it bringing together organizations around existing regulation and new regulations and making sure that people embrace those in the right way and answer that clear question, why have I got this data and whose benefit is it for? On security, the government has actually made a good step here. Their cybersecurity strategy, the Cybersecurity Essentials 10-step program, is a very good place to start. And we think that that needs to be brought into every sector and every part of industry, especially Industry 4.0. And in particular, bearing in mind the comment I made about APT10 and where they attacked, as you bring more and more of the supply chain into an Industry 4.0 integrated environment, you need to take responsibility for their security as well. And lastly, of course, we need to address the growing skills gap. Skilled labour, engineering labour has been short in the UK for some considerable time. Now add to that digital skills. So we have to develop a different approach to the digital skills pipeline. We've got to have a flexible approach to this. We've got to embrace every part of our society, starting with the role and the participation of women. I'm just looking around the audience to see how we're doing today. I don't know what mark I would give us. We in the tech industry are not brilliant at this, but I think manufacturing may also have a big challenge to look at. And other communities need to be brought into this. And we've got to start right at school level in changing attitudes and making people understand their opportunity. And lastly, of course, on connectivity. It's been said the UK has a pretty good digital infrastructure, but in the new world and in this international space that we're competing in the context of global Britain, pretty good isn't good enough. So we really have got to up our game there, and if we put those things together, if we work on those solutions, and if you learn from the mistakes that digital technology has made over the last N years, I think we can take the lead around the world in making our manufacturing companies into tech companies they need to be. Thank you.